So, very good evening, everyone, and a very warm good morning to Professor Samantha MacBride. And because it's a good morning for her, because she is joining SARA Bootcamp from USA, New York. And thank you so much, Professor Samantha MacBride, for joining this bootcamp and giving a special guest lecture about research and AI. And right now, Professor Samantha is a adjunct associate professor in Baruch College in USA, and she's a consistent mentor for the SARA students. Previously, also she has taught research in our previous summer schools, and I requested again her humbly for her help for this boot camp to teach us about research and how to use AI ethically in the research. And she is very kind, though she is having a hectic schedule, and she accepted our invitation. And thank you so much for that, Professor Samantha. And we all are very excited to hear from you about this talk. And now I request all the participants uh, to you interact with Professor Samantha, and
Yes.
you can ask your question through the chat box. I will also keep the track of the chat, and Professor also can keep a track, and then we can answer the question one by one after the talk. Right. So now over to you, Professor Samantha.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Ajay and Dr. Kiran for inviting me. And yes, I want this to be very interactive. Let me ask, so this is yeah, are all the students on Zoom right now? They're not live in the classroom?
They are in the classroom, but we all are sitting
Oh,
in the same room, and they have logged in
okay.
through the Zoom. Yes.
Okay, okay, great. Well, I hope this can be very interactive because, as you'll soon find out, I am not an expert in this. And as I'm going to say, explain to you, no one is an expert, despite what they tell you. But let me get my PowerPoint up just a second here. Okay, Dr. AJ, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, everyone. So, thank you for inviting me. This topic is something that is very important to me, especially in teaching, but also in my own research. And what I hope we can do is more have a conversation because I mean, I will go through a PowerPoint, but please ask questions. And then afterwards, I hope we can have a conversation about it because as I'll get into, that's what we need to do. We need to talk to each other. That is one major way of responding to AI, as I'll explain. So I'll just go through some introductions about myself, and then I'd like to hear from all of you, and then talk about AI, using AI to help you with your research rather than do your research, and some future directions that I see us going in this very uncertain world. And then I'd like to end with just an open discussion. Um, Maybe folks unmuting their mics and talking, or at least typing chat entry. So, very briefly about me, I am, born and raised in the United States and in New York City. I have an educational background that starts in the 80s. I did a biology degree, then I did a master's of public administration, and I began my career as a civil servant for the city of New York in 1995 and retired in 2022. So I have always been an applied academic. I spent 22 years working essentially in recycling and composting and waste management for the city of New York. And then I moved over in the last part of my career to work in wastewater treatment, sewage treatment, on process engineering, although I'm not an engineer, I was working with process engineers, and looking at that form of waste management. And also, while I was at sanitation, I did a PhD in sociology, and I have and I my dissertation was about the area that I was working on, which was recycling in the United States. I was not doing my field work literally while I was working, but because of that, I had deep subject matter expertise in that topic. Um, and now, one of the things I do is I'm an advisor to a community-based compost organization. You can kind of see in the background, that's Lower Manhattan. This is an island that is off the tip of Manhattan. Um, and if anyone wants to know more about it, I can sort of talk about it a little bit more. But this is just a picture of their compost operation. And now I mainly teach. I teach in the area of urban environmental policy, but more recently, I have been asked to teach civics, U.S. Constitution and Government to undergraduates, as well as a class called Public Service and Why It Matters. Um, and so I teach both masters in an applied professional program and undergraduates, but I have never actually taught a PhD student, or taught in a PhD program. So bear that in mind, right? My experience with PhD is mainly my own. Um, so I'd like to, if it's appropriate, Dr. Ajay, to kind of have everyone introduce themselves maybe, and even we could maybe stop share and people put on their cameras if they would like to do. Is that okay?
Yes, it will be good they
Okay.
can introduce, but I think they can introduce only through the chat because if they
Oh,
unmute,
really?
it will be echoing in the same room.
I get it. Okay. All
Yes.
right. Well, okay. Um, in the meantime, could you, in the chat is great, but could you then, Dr. AJ, could you give a sense of what the fields are that the students are studying? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes, sorry, I was
Oh,
mute.
oh,
So like being time when participants are typing their introduction. So
okay,
I will just brief that most of the students are from social science and humanities. They are from the
okay.
political science and master
Lit
students. Along with that, we have two faculties. One is a faculty of bioinformatics, and he and the one there is a faculty. She is from political science. So they both are
okay,
professors. And
okay, great.
yes. So, but none of them, our participants are like computer science typical background, you know. So these are the people who want to go from social science, humanities towards coding, and you know, as AI is in hype a lot, so we all want to understand how to ethically integrate AI, you know. So
Okay, that's great. So my background in sociology and public administration is very close to political science. I use it all the time. Um, so I'm definitely that's very interesting. And the other students in the class, oh, environmental science, political science, I see, and sociology. Okay. Um, Interesting. Electrical engineering, great. Um, I I have a lot of my work has been with engineering at sort of at the border of engineering and social science. Um, okay, well, I will go back to the PowerPoint here and keep going here. Just a second. Let me just see if there are any more. Public administration, excellent. Yeah. Sony Pasunuri. You know, when I first started teaching in public administration, I thought, God, that is such a boring sounding topic. but it's not. It's actually, it sounds much more boring than political science, but it's actually super important. Okay. Well, so if anyone else can introduce themselves who's in the class, that'd be great, but I will go on. So this book, The Age of Spiritual Machines by Ray Kurzweil, was written in the 1990s. And I remember I bought it. I still have it on my bookshelf. I read it, and it described essentially the world that we're living in now in a way, but it described it as much more predictable, efficient, and in the servicing of actual human goals and ends than I think is unfolding. I have to confess that when not so much when I read this book, but when I was younger, I thought that the world of the future would be like Star Trek. And I have to say that the ethics and morals of Star Trek are studied really around the world as, albeit science fiction, a good way to organize society. Um, on Star Trek, the computer is infallible and knows everything. Um, the first thing about AI to realize is that it is not infallible, which I'm sure all of you know, right? And it's probabilistic, which has taken me some time to understand, means that it is not producing an answer based on anything more than what has come before it. Now, in something like coding, that 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 can work very well, but the AI that we have right now is not delivering either that model of society that was portrayed in science fiction, or even the certainty um, I think needed to operate, certainly without human oversight. This is the way that I view AI. AI is this incoming tidal wave, and it's getting close. It's now very close to us. Um, it doesn't matter whether we like it or not, it is coming towards us. So the important thing is, what do we do, right? Do we run towards it? Do we stand and watch? Or do we run away? Do we figure out ways to manage and deal with it as the ships that are beyond the tidal break often do? When there's a tidal wave coming, ships go out to sea. There's no point in not using AI at all. And I do have a lot of disagreements with sometimes with my colleagues, but as I'll explain, it doesn't matter whether you want it to come or not. It is coming, and so what matters is how we respond to it. So we have had the ascendance of AI, which is continuing in conjunction with quantum computing, which is going to massively speed up and has the compute capacity that we've known. Um, Advances in robotics leading in the area of warfare, but also coming soon to our daily lives. The advances in neural biotech, so that it's not science fiction to talk about a brain implant and controlling a cursor with your thoughts. There are obviously going to be massive, massive labor impacts that no one has thought through from the ascendance of AI in conjunction with these texts. You all probably know better than me that it has affected the speed and scale of data science in a sort of positive way. I mean, I will admit, I now can work on very large data sets um, and do things that I was not able to do before, just using ChatGPT to help me with the coding. That's what I use it for a lot. And so there is going to be a demise of coding. I think about students, my students who are studying information technology. and accounting. I have a lot of students who study accounting. I mean, those fields are going to be seriously changing, and there will not be coders in the way that there have been. But on a larger level, there's a ongoing collapse of truth claims, which I'm sure you're all very aware of. Epistemological approaches to what can be said is truth, what counts as a fact, which is completely destabilizing to at least Western society. And I believe that the university is going to be decimated by the coming of AI. The model of the university, at least I only really want to talk about the US because that is where I am, and that's really all I've studied in depth. But I believe the university as we know it is going to go away. The question is, what is going to come in its place? If we don't prepare humanistically, what we will have in the future is commodification of thought and communicative capacity. The business model will be to pay um, for the ability to think and communicate in addition to everything else. This will be a metered um, utility if we do not think about it, but and react to it and prevent that. But the problem is that I say we, at least in the US, are nowhere near, as far as I can tell, anywhere beyond maybe theoretical discussions of how to prevent that from happening. So this is all happening in the United States against a backdrop of, I mean, I guess the way that I could describe it is an ongoing waking, certainly among white people, among people who are more privileged, that these ongoing social realities organized around violence and power, everyone is complicit in them, and the image that has been portrayed about the United States has always been a fantasy. Now, some people know this, other people don't. As I say, it's a process of waking and also a lot of denial. Uh, and then you also have social media and what that's doing to young people and their development. Not to mention our ecological crises, which are still there, even though what is going on militarily and politically is so immediately threatening that I have to say, discussion of environmental issues is muted in the United States, even as the government is rolling back environmental regulations. So, against that background, which um, is admittedly a kind of a dim view of where we are and where we're going, but I believe we need to be honest about that in the US. What can I tell you about using AI in your research? I would say that there are levels of what I would call intellectual danger. And the danger is that you lose or you do not develop the capacity to be an academic in the way that we were before AI. And that's what you need to keep. You need to keep a focus on as a PhD, someone holding a PhD, you are held to the highest standards, whether others respect it or not outside of academia, to looking at evidence, to careful methodology, to all of the things that you learn in a PhD program. So the intellectual danger is least when you're doing what I do and probably a lot of you do, right? You tell it to do simple steps, you guide it, you you maybe ask it to run some regressions or something for you, but that's not your results. That's just sort of trying stuff out. Um, and to a degree, although this is a slippery slope, in academia, you are expected to read vast literatures, and this has always been true. It's also always been true that no professor is literally reading all of these works cover to cover and remembering them as much as they might sound like they are, right? So pre-AI, they're an academic means skimming, means note taking, and ultimately means boiling down something like, Max Weber's writing on economy and society to a few phrases that you use in a presentation. Um, so when you have AI doing the reading for you and summarizing and distilling, you're entering a dangerous territory where that work, even though it wasn't reading a book cover to cover, has not been done by your brain. And then we get into AI writing for you, which is even more dangerous. You, it's certainly fine to do proofreading, and it does a great job of making pre-written text more concise. When I use, so let me back up. I use AI to summarize and distill. I'll freely admit it. I will be rushing. I will have a student send me an article and I just say, AI, summarize the article for me. I'm not proud of that, right? But on the other hand, when I know that I'm reading something important for my thinking, I do not allow myself to do that. And um, also, I do not allow myself and my colleagues do not allow ourselves to have AI write for us. We sit, we write at a blank page on the screen ourselves. On the other hand, when I'm saying we, like I'm 60 years old, so I have those skills. I am sad to say that I can tell among my students, even over the last year, that the skills are going down. So some of my undergraduate students are freshmen. They're just right out of high school. They're in their 20s. Sometimes I have a slightly older student. Because of AI, I now have to give everything as a handwritten in-class exam. I can see the demise of basic grammar among our college students over the past 2 years. And I'm talking about verb agreement, like I'm talking about really basic grammar that everyone is taught in school. Finally, you want to not have AI do the thinking for you. That is the most dangerous of all, right? Making connections, coming up with ideas. In the future, our creativity, our inventiveness will be all that we have to distinguish our knowledge from AI, because AI is nothing but a mirror. It is working on existing knowledge that was created by other human beings. It does not, even though it seems like it does, provide any new insights, and I don't think we even want it to. It should be used as a tool. But there are a number of under-discussed questions, as I alluded to before. How much are university professors really using AI in their own work? At the university, this is something that is kind of unspoken. I mean, we have some professors who are outraged that their students are using AI to entirely do their written assignments. And that is absolutely no way to learn or teach. But the outrage, which is similar to when students used to plagiarize in the old-fashioned way, I don't think it's the same. Furthermore, because as I'll get into, or I say later here, right? Are we supposed to expect our students to show this human restraint when they are under so much pressure from so many other directions to refrain from using AI. I disagree. And furthermore, no one directly talks with one another as a professor about how they use AI in their own research, I've noticed. And when they do, they kind of tend to downplay it. What is really going on, I don't think we know, although certainly that would be a great area of research to do. And there, it may have been done, and I just didn't prepare enough for this presentation to know about it. But another under discussed question is who was consulted before all of this? ChatGPT and Claude just exploded in public awareness a couple of years ago and have radically transformed our society. And the way that I teach and work have been deeply disrupted, as well as our students in the university have been deeply disrupted. It is not, it's not been a good thing for university teaching. So my view is not that we should be outraged or punitive. There are many professors in my department who want to use tech and other methods to, basically for surveillance of using AI. I just, in addition to that not being really ethical, I don't think it just doesn't interest me. I don't want to spend my time doing that. And what I have started to develop, and it's challenging for a lot of reasons, is to go back more to in teaching to the Socratic method, to the whole notion that we learn by talking. And um, I have been telling my students that over and over again, and making them talk in class, which is hard for them. Um, you should know that if things are like they are in the US, nobody's getting help and training for teaching with AI, much less using it. There may be like workshops using AI and data science. Yeah, that's all great. But the things that I'm talking about here, right? How do you avoid using the AI for doing the thinking for you? um, for diminishing the development of your own intellectual capacity as you do your PhD, I don't see guidance around. Um, and so, but if you're doing a PhD, you're probably or often are not always going and doing quote unquote field work, right? That is a form, which I'll talk about in a second, um, of what I think can be an antidote to the influence of AI. Um, and so I would say that one thing to do is from time to time talk about if you're doing a literature review, which I realize is very tempting to use AI in, talk about it and ideally talk about it with other people. And also another thing is illustrations, draw diagrams. More and more, this is what we are looking for visual learners and communication. And for some people, like me, because I'm a visual learner, drawing is a way to integrate integrate knowledge so that I know, excuse me, that I really have it and I don't haven't just leaned on the AI. The other is, as I say, the 3D world, the so-called field, right? And I am getting more and more involved at my university in something called experiential and community engaged learning. This is this is at the compost area that I told you about. This is me, this is another professor, and we had a bunch of students, and we're trying to develop an ongoing learning relationship with this site and students. And I have talked about in the past participatory action research, which is a form of research that is explicitly normative, right? So you're going out into the field, you're collecting data, but you're also doing something to help and contribute to the people and the communities that you're actually studying, and you're involving them deeply in the entire research design. And this gets to the aims of research. And this is actually from a presentation I did before on research methods. We have basic or theoretical research, which has the goal of expanding human knowledge. And when I wrote that a couple of years ago, I wasn't even thinking of AI, but emphasis on the human and the the I don't think we can lose sight of the fact that really new theoretical insights are going to come from human beings and not AI at the end of the day. Now, applied research is when you're taking those insights to solve problems. That's the area that I've always worked in. And AI is often advanced as a solution. When I worked in wastewater treatment, there were many, many companies and people outside the actual agency that were talking about using AI in wastewater treatment, and it absolutely can be used in automating sampling and designing responsive systems to changes in pH and temperature and things like that. But you have to have a solid basis to implement it upon. And where I was, there were so many institutional problems and engineering problems and decaying infrastructure and inadequate staffing and procurement problems that we used to joke when AI was mentioned, say about an AI powered ox cart, that we saw our wastewater treatment plant as an ox cart. So putting AI to drive that would really not solve any problems productively. It was a distraction. Instead, what needed to be done was the basic work of upgrading the plant, increasing staffing and training, and other very human things. Finally, there's action or participatory research, which, as I mentioned, is outward focused and focused on making the act of research improve society as it's going on, and also human dignity of not being studied as a kind of a specimen socially, but instead as a collaborator, as a group of people who have a lot of input into what the research question is and what kind of data is gathered about themselves. So this is really what when Dr. Kiran asked me to speak on this, once again, I'm not sure that what I have to say is that useful to you, because I don't know what's going on. That's my point of view. And frankly, I don't think anybody does, despite what they say. Now, what do you do with that information? You can only just sit with it right now. And we see this wave that's coming closer and closer to us. We have to grapple with that fact. We have to, as the scholar Donna Haraway said, we have to stay with the trouble. That is where we are right now. So I'd like to actually that's all I have. Uh, and I really think that, kind of in keeping with what I said earlier, we need to talk to each other. And so I'd like to open it up for discussion.
Yeah. So we can ask your questions and query in the chat box, and I will go through the chat and I will read for Professor Samantha. So we have, okay, Dr. Ashok, is your question answered or is it a question? Okay, creating bioinformatic pipeline for big data analysis.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, so let's give the participants 1-2 minutes and let them drop
Okay.
down, drop their questions. Then I'll pick up. What limits should be posed on it?
I mean, I think it really would depend on what kind of research you're doing. Um, if you're looking, and I really have to apologize to all of you because you may have been expecting me to be saying, here's a tool you can use, there's a tool you can use it in this, that, or the other way, but um, I am not an expert on that. I mean, I can tell you I use ChatGPT reluctantly, and I use it a lot for writing Python code. I tried to learn Python and I don't know why. Partly I think because of my age, I found it very hard to adapt to it. Now I can use it extensively, and it has changed my data analytic capacity. Absolutely. I don't think that's probably the most efficient way because I discuss my data set with the chat GPT. I tell it what I want to do. I usually ask it to run code in Python so that it can familiarize itself with the data set, the columns, and all that, column names. And so I use it a lot that way. I have tried a little bit with Claude to directly use it on data sets, and I haven't had that much success. So this is just shows you kind of what a beginner I am. For political reasons, I would like to stop using ChatGPT and move to Claude, but I have not been able to replicate um, my skill with Python yet in Claude. I also use ChatGPT to help me with GIS, to walk me through. I learned GIS a long time ago, and I'm trying to get back into it. And so I definitely use it as a coach and a teacher in any kind of coding and approach to data science. Sometimes I ask it to run simple stats for me. I don't really use advanced statistical methods, and if I did, I would probably consult a colleague. But for basic regressions, it's more to understand directions that things are going. Ultimately, I probably will use R to do, a full regression analysis the way it should be done. I this is almost a confession in a way. Sometimes I have an idea and I talk to Chat GPT about the idea. And I do it to kind of clarify my own thinking. Another way that I use it is to ask questions that I am too embarrassed to ask my colleagues. Yeah, academic questions that might sound dumb to ask my colleagues, that I have always kind of wondered about, like basic questions. And then, of course, once I get sort of an orientation or an answer, I will go to the literature. That's what I do. Um, but I have access to quote unquote the literature because I'm a professor. I have access to journals and all that. Um, and and not everyone has that, right? Um, so that's kind of how and then I try to use it for administrative tasks. Like, I have a long list of student names mixed up with numbers and stuff. Get that list out, put it in here. I try to use it that way. So now I can see some of the questions, and why don't I move on? So, um, Chetna, I'm not sure if that answers you fully. Um, what limit should be posed on it? I think the question is,
Yeah.
we have our own limits, and then we have the limits that regulation should be placing on it. But politically, that's not happening, right? So there are very strong powers out there that They might say they want regulation, but they don't really want it because the explicit goal of the head of these AI firms is the commodification of thinking. They have said this. They see a future in which information is paid for like a utility. Um, on to the next question. And how long do we have, Dr.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we do have
Ajay?
time. We do have time.
Okay.
Yes. So let's go for the next question. Next question is from Jigisha, and she is a master's student of political science. Yes. And her question is, thank you for the session. It was very insightful. I wanted to ask, where does ethic and transparency stand in doing AI? Since we have seen cases of even softwares like Turnitin showing false AI detection. On
Right.
what
Yeah.
should we rely and to what extent?
So I just don't I have just walked away from the whole endeavor of using Turnitin, which I used to use, right? I used to use Turnitin because sadly, some, not all, but some of my students would plagiarize, which is very different than using AI. Um, and but now you can't. Anyone who thinks that they can use a detection software for AI is just fooling themselves. Maybe they can for a minute now, but the methods are just evolving as fast as the detection methods are. So it's really your own personal ethics and your own self-interest, because as I tell my students, if you use AI to do the thinking for you, you're not going to learn. And my students are very interested in being ethical, but at a practical level, I say you can embarrass yourself very badly in public if you are relying on AI without constantly checking it yourself. Um, so I would say, and this is hard because now we don't even have that not that sort of curb on our own, let's say, worst impulses to use AI and you're in a rush, you use AI to write a short paragraph and no, not going to be a way of checking it. What is this going to do to university publishing, to academic journals? Nobody has really thought this through.
Okay, thank you, Professor. The next question is from Dr. Ashok. He's a faculty of bioinformatics. And the question is, what is the difference between participatory research, where people act as co-researchers, and approaches that focus on beneficiaries in design thinking? How can these ideas be applied to solid waste management using examples and data from New York?
Well, thank you for that question. And this is my area of research. I think that approaches that focus on beneficiaries in design thinking is very similar to participatory action research. They would go hand in hand. The basic idea is that there is no superiority by the university in applied research on solving urban problems. So my ideas, and there are many people in New York City who are activists and who are working in composting specifically, that have this approach, even though they might not be doing it academically. They have been fighting politically, really, for recognition, for funding, for land. That's really important. But in terms of what I'm using it for, is I am doing a very deep analysis of what's called enforcement data, which means there are laws about how you put out trash, when you put it out, what kind of receptacle, how clean, recycling laws, separating your organics, all these things. Unlike maybe Europe, um, A lot of people don't follow those laws in New York. And so there are uniformed officers out there writing tickets and fines and things like that. All that data has been amassed and is public. And so I'm looking at patterns in enforcement, um, first to understand whether certain neighborhoods are being more enforced than others, but also whether there's a connection between enforcement and solid waste outcomes like recycling rate or cleanliness. And what I've seen so far is that there's no connection. So enforcement is a kind of a routine political administrative action that appears to be divorced from actual outcomes. And I've always had the hunch that it was that way, but now I have access to a huge, huge data set, and I'm looking at that. That would be an example. But New York City is no, you know, is no standard bearer for waste management, I would say. I mean, it isn't terrible there, but it's still following a 20th century model. It can't, we do treat the water, even though we have aging, crumbling plants. We do pick the trash up. Most of it is exported to landfills. The landfills are operated, properly under regulation. So it's not like it's a disaster, but it is not, there has been really no progress in the direction of sustainability, circularity, or involvement of people in waste businesses. They still have a strong 20th century approach, and I just finished writing comments on their solid waste management plan for the next 20 years, and it's really mainly about collecting and exporting trash to other areas. And so, to get to your second question, Dr. Ashok Kumar, living with massive solid waste affect human thinking. Well, waste is an important social, cultural, economic category. It affects a lot of things, whether we're aware of it or not. But I don't think massive solid waste unfortunately, is not really apprehended except by only a tiny number of people who live near a landfill or who have to pick the waste up, right? Most people, it's out of sight, out of mind. So even in a city like New York, where you have tens of millions of tons of solid waste generated every year, it seems like it goes away. So it doesn't affect human thinking enough, I think.
Yeah, thank you. So we have around 20 minutes more, 15 to 20 minutes, and let's take question accordingly. So the next question is from Yamini. Yamini is a BTech student, and after that she did MBA. And let's see. The question is AI ethics. With today's advancement in AI, do you think it's it's being ignored? What is ignored? I
Yes, it
yeah.
is being ignored.
Okay.
It's more than yeah, it's more than being ignored. I mean, in the field of the big AI companies like OpenAI or Anthropic, they had ethics officers who were integrated into everything they did, and now they're moving away from that business model, right? Um, so no, I don't. So yes, it is being completely ignored, despite what may be said publicly. Um, and I frankly think that there at a certain point, when you become a tech billionaire, you lose sight of ethics. It seems to me. I mean, as an observer, if you think about Elon Musk and his role in what he attempted to do in the U.S. government, it is a sociopathic personality that has no regard for human beings. And if you look at what they write about when they think no one's looking, they see a future in which we have a drastically diminished population. Um, how does that happen? You know, a lot of people die very badly, right? And there's a vastly diminished population. Maybe AI could help secure resources in a world like that, but I no, I see it totally driven by not even economics. It's a certain kind of sociopathy that emerges with it.
Thank you. Our next question is from Dr. Ashok. How can we compare physical solid waste management with the emerging problem of digital or AI generated waste, and what strategies can be developed to manage both effectively?
Um, so are you talking about what we would call e-waste or electronic waste, and or the waste of energy that comes from AI use and the equipment? That's one area of concern. That's actually not, in my mind, the biggest one. Okay, both. Um, or are you talking about digital waste? If you're talking about like wasted data, I don't know anything about that. Although I've read some things in humanities where where they write about wasted knowledge and wasted effort. But in the physical world, which is where I live, right? That's um it's a matter uh of will. Like it's a matter of generating garbage data without thinking. Okay. So I think there's a field called discard studies that was started by a colleague of mine, and they write about garbage data. They write about human beings being treated as garbage. They write about waste in a very broad way, and they bring these things up. I myself have not really delved into that direction. So I'm more focused on the physical world, the engineering problems, and also political economy. Um, So I would say going back to the e-waste and the AI waste, one thing that AI is good at is sorting, is pattern recognition and sorting. And I know that it has vastly improved our recycling plants. It has meant loss of jobs where it used to be manual sorting, but in that case, it's not really a job it was an incredibly low paying, low wage job with no prospects of advancement, and it was dangerous. So I think AI is very good at that. I am I'm thinking also that potentially it could be used for enforcement, if focused on bins in front of buildings, not people. Um, that I still think, I mean, technologically we could do that today. The question is how to integrate that into a municipal bureaucracy. And we are very far away from that in New York City, very far. Um, those are the main ways that I think, I mean, I see mainly AI being used in sorting, and sorting is extremely important in waste management. It's actually one of you probably know this, Dr. Ashok Kumar, you probably know this, right? Sorting is like an integral function in waste management. And it can do it in conjunction with technologies, screening, shaking, blowing, all the mechanics of sorting. Um, and it can recognize things at the curb in great detail. I remember I was planning a waste characterization study about 5 years ago for the whole city, and there was a consultant who was talking about AI being able to recognize bulk waste at the curb because we couldn't collect it to sample it for waste characterization. And For those who work in waste management, you may know that work. And I remember looking at him and I'm like, you're crazy. There's no way an AI camera can recognize a broken chair on the curb. Well, boy, was I wrong. He knew about it before I did. So in that area, the other area, if you have really robust, well-functioning infrastructure and have invested a lot of money in it, and this does happen in Europe, there is promise in wastewater treatment in in automating the feedback loops, right? In cybernetics, so that currently the way that we do it is to take samples several times a day, analyze them in the lab, adjust parameters, go out, obviously observe what's going on, adjust oxygenation, aeration, all that. If you have sensors and systems for automating responses, that could potentially make wastewater treatment extremely efficient and lead the way in also what I was doing work on, which is extracting value from sewage sludge in terms of industrial chemistry. But you what we found, because there was all this excitement about using AI in the wastewater treatment plant, is if you have sensors that are fouling all the time and you have to send someone out 3 times a day to wash them off, and you don't even have enough people to do it, talking about AI is ridiculous. And it was something that angered a lot of the people who worked at these plants, because the real issues were not being addressed. And meanwhile, at a higher level with consultants, and they're saying, oh, AI can solve it. It's like, no, no. So that would be my very long-winded answer to that.
My apologies. I missed one question. The question is from Prerna Bhatia, and she is a MSc Environmental Science student. The question is, how do you see technologies like AI transforming waste management systems in the next decade or the coming decade?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it would be similar to that. I mean, I think for sorting, yeah, as Dr. Ashok Kumar says, it's effective for pattern recognition and forecasting. It identifies correlations. So if you're talking about solid waste management, um, it may be able to do a better job of forecasting anticipated changes in waste trends, like e-waste.
Yes. What happened? Internet? Okay. 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah. And now we are back.
Okay. In solid waste management, as those of you who study it know, you're not moving materials around in the same way that you would be moving the flow of sewage and liquids in an industrial plant. Like it's heterogeneous, it needs to be touched, and then it needs to be made into items of use through manual and mechanical means. And I don't think there's any way AI can do that for us. That's why I like it, because waste management is real. It's sensible in the way that meaning it's related to the senses. It's related to us being human in the real world. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a beautiful interaction, and we got a glitch and we could not hear you for a few seconds. So can you hear me now? Professor?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So yeah, so thank you so much. And Dr. Kiran is also here now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Oh,
Hello.
nice to see you, Dr. Kiran.
Thank you,
Your
ma'am.
daughter's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Now
you for
she's
accepting our request, ma'am.
Oh, no problem.
The session is very wonderful, ma'am.
Well, thank you. As I say, I'm not an expert and I don't teach PhD students and I don't have any answers. That's the thing. I have no answers about
Hello,
this.
I
hello
agree.
to ma'am.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
said.
Hello,
So
ma'am.
now, like in the presence of you and all the students, now let's complete this 3 days boot camp. And Professor Samantha, this year, like March is a month for Women's International Day. So we thought to make 100% free for all women any coding boot camp from the SARA in the month of March. I wish I
Right.
could do this throughout the year, but present situation doesn't allow us. But definitely in the future, because I completely agree. We should not just give advices to the women. We need to give them proper opportunity so that they can empower themselves. So, and as our name suggests, believing in the name of Mata Savitri Bai and Ramabai, two great leaders who worked for social justice and for the marginalized communities, we always work for the empowerment of women. So, with this, and I'm very happy, and I congratulate to all the participants, for staying strong and working 9 to 6, and taking their first steps in learning coding. And thank you so much, Professor Samantha, for giving this guest
Thank you,
lecture.
ma'am.
And we'll see you soon in the future events. And congratulations to all the participants.
Congratulations.
Okay, it was a pleasure and my very best to all the participants, and it's very nice to see you both.
Okay, take care. Bye, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.
Yes, say bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Say bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yes. Okay.